Hey everybody, I hope you guys are doing well. Forgive my cracking voice. I've been under the weather for a minute now. I've had fever, it's just been a mess, but I'm on the mend. I don't sound like it, but I'm definitely getting better. All right, so forgive me if I cough or sneeze something. I'm going to try not to, but just bear with me. I wanted to come to you guys today because I want to talk a little bit about the life and legacy of B.Smith and just celebrate her life for the most part here. She died yesterday at the age of 70 after a long battle with Alzheimer's disease. She had early onset Alzheimer's. It's presented itself and has presented itself pretty much for the last 20 years of B's life. All right. And it brought up some really triggering and touchy conversations over the last year because of her husband and the unconventional, non-traditional relationship he was having with another woman while he was the caretaker of B. But before we get in that, I want to put a pin in that. I want to talk a little bit about B, who, you know, a lot of people like to call her the Black Martha Stewart, and I take absolute offense to anybody calling her the Black Martha Stewart. She was just B. Smith. She didn't need to be called the Black nothing. She was B. Smith. Okay, B. F. Smith. Okay, Martha Stewart, Rachel Ray, Paula Dean, all these other people that you see with the little lifestyle shows and the cooking and stuff. No, B. Smith was the blueprint to all of that. Okay, she was a blueprint to all of that. She was a model. She was a restaurateur. She had her big break in modeling in 1976. She was the second Black woman to snag the cover of Mademoiselle. That was big. That was big. She traveled the world. She just loved, you know, fine things, food, drink, beautiful things. I mean, this woman, again, was the blueprint to all this stuff that you're seeing right now. So when you see these Paula Dean, you see, I hope we don't see Paula Dean, but if you see Martha Stewart out here doing all this other stuff, please don't think that she created that. No, she did not. That was B. Smith. So don't call her the Black Martha Stewart. Just keep that out your mouth, because there would be no Martha Stewart without a B. Smith. Okay. She created all that. That was the blueprint. Okay. Now, B. Smith got married to Dan Gasby in 1992. All right. He was an executive producer over at Essence, I think like the Essence Awards or something like that. So he was an executive. They got together, they got married, and she took on the role of taking care of his daughter that came with him in marriage. All right. So she never actually had any biological children of her own, but that was her child. Dana was as much of her child as it was Dan's. And, you know, they lived a good life, a happy life. Again, B had restaurants. She has I think it's still in Bed Bath & Beyond. She still has a line in Bed Bath & Beyond. So her empire grew with them together. Her empire grew and grew and grew. Now, over the last, I don't know, a couple of decades or so, B started showing signs of early onset Alzheimer's, where she was just forgetting, you know, it starts off with little things. They can't seem to remember their words and things like that. And it kind of came to a head once when she was, I believe she was on the Today Show trying to show Samantha Guthrie, I believe, like this recipe for chicken wings. And she completely was at a loss for words. She could not remember she couldn't remember what she was going to say. And little things like that kept happening. And, it was just apparent that there was something going on, and she was eventually diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, okay, which she would live with for 20 years or so. Now, I saw a lot of people in their comments yesterday asking, how do you die for Alzheimer's? And I'll, because I have a personal experience with that, I'll certainly share that. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Yesterday, her husband took to his social media, took to Facebook to, you know, to announce that she passed away at the age of, oh, I'm sorry, she passed away Saturday. So she passed away Saturday at the age of 70 years old from early onset Alzheimer's. Okay. Now, a lot of people haven't been feeling Dan Gasby for a while. Okay. I did a video on this about a year ago when the news of this unconventional living arrangement came about with Dan. All right. So when people started to speculate what was going on with Dan, he came out and basically had I guess he did an interview or something like that, about this thing that was going on in his house. Now, again, they've been married since 1992. That's a long time. Okay. For the last 20 years or so, B has been showing signs of Alzheimer's, but over the last, I would say, 10 years or so, she has declined to the point where she didn't even know who he was. There would be days where she didn't even know who he was. But this is where things got really sticky. Dan took on a new girlfriend. Dan met this white woman named Alex in 2017. Now, he had been taking care of B. He was her primary caretaker. His daughter, their daughter Dana, was also a caretaker. She had moved back home to help take care of B as well, because B got to the point where she was like around, I think it was 2014, B had wandered off. She had like taken the ferry. She had taken the train. They couldn't find her. So things really came to a head years ago where they just couldn't hide it anymore. They had to come out and say something about B's condition. They also co-authored a book called Before I Forget in 2015. Now, around this time, B had definitely declined as far as her mental capacity, her mental capabilities here, where she needed somebody to take care of her full time. Dan started to see a woman named Alex Lerner. She was 53 years old at the time, had 3 children, and she met him in a bar. Dan and her started to get to know each other, and they started to date. You know, they were part of that Hamptons high society where they would run in the same circles, but eventually would start to date. And things got a little sticky, I would think, when he decided to bring Alex into the home, the marital home of both he and B.Smith, where she would also act as a so-called caregiver to B. And a lot of people were not cool with that. A lot of people was blasting him. They was called like, how could you do that? How on earth could you disrespect your wife? And, you know, at first he tried to defend it like, well, B knows this, and she said she was okay with it. She was fine with it. But, you know, there were some people that, like, there's a little rumblings from B's friends, like B would have never been okay with that at that time that he decided to do this, B's mind was already gone. All right. So Dan has shown many, many pictures of Alex and B together. He says that Alex has moved into the house to also help him with B, but that is his girlfriend. He has even gone as far as to say, B, this is my girlfriend. This is my girlfriend. And it doesn't register to her. It doesn't register to B that this woman is his girlfriend. And a lot of B.Smith's friends, or fans, I should say, were not cool with this arrangement because they feel like he's being disrespectful to B.Smith by moving this white woman. And she could have been black as far as I'm concerned, but just moving this woman into their marital home and saying, well, she is helping me take care of B. Now, when this news broke about a year ago, and he was really getting the slack, I was on his ass too, because, you know, here's the thing. As a person who understands how Alzheimer's can take over a person's life where they don't even know who you are anymore. Some days they know who you are, sometimes they don't. It does take a toll on the caregiver. And people don't really understand that. My issue with Dan was, why bring her into the house? Why move this woman into the house? And now that B is gone, a lot of people took to social media yesterday. Here's Alex. A lot of people took to social media yesterday. Well, you know, here's a woman B.Smith, who has built Black wealth. You know how hard it is to amass Black wealth. And here this man is now B's Black wealth is going to now be shared with this white woman and possibly her 3 children. This empire that B.Smith has created, that Dan has continued to, of course, control, will now be shared with Alex, who was already living in their home for the last several years. And now he'll go on and marry Alex, I'm sure, right? And a lot of people just wasn't feeling that. And there was some other people that was like, listen, you don't know what it's like in that situation and you don't know what you would do. Okay. Now, let me just share something really personal with you guys. If you didn't hear my first video, which I did about a year ago, so you probably didn't. I took care of my father who had Alzheimer's disease, and it's a very difficult thing to do. All right. My father moved in. I didn't even know what I was looking at. I didn't know what I was looking at. Okay. He hadn't even been diagnosed yet, but I knew that something was wrong. I knew something was absolutely wrong with him. I remember, him just walking out the door. Okay. Just new to my house, new to this neighborhood, never been in this neighborhood. He just walked out the house. The police found him like almost 2 miles, away, no shoes, it was just bad. Okay. I remember I used to have to take the knobs off of my stove every day and put them up in a high cabinet because my father would turn on the light the eyes and stuff like at night, in the middle of the night, and I'd be hearing the fire. So it's very difficult to take care of somebody like that. The toll that it takes on you personally, it's a lot. And the fact that, you are this person, sometimes they know you and they know who you are, and sometimes they don't even know who you are. I remember where I would sit there and be like, he would call me mommy. He would like revert back to his childhood and how he would honestly think I was his mother. And I used to say, no, I'm not your mother. I'm not your mom, dad. I'm not your mom. And then the doctor used to say, you know what, to avoid those arguments, just go along with it. And I had to learn how to adjust to where he was in that space and time in his mind. And I had to to avoid arguments, to avoid getting him agitated, to avoid those kind of moments, just go with it. And then a sundowning where, at the middle of the night, you just get up and want to roam around because, at Alzheimer's, their clocks, those circadian, those rhythms in their head, they're gone. All right. They are not the person that they were. They are not. So to play devil's advocate here, even though I don't agree at all with the fact that this man brought this woman into their marital home, his girlfriend, and be a caretaker. You don't know how she was taking care of B. We don't know if she was being nice to her or abusing her. We don't know, right? But to play devil's advocate, if B has been gone mentally for years, don't you think, just as from a caregiver's perspective, because again, unless you've been in that position, you don't know. Do you think at some point would you understand that, okay, this man has to indeed go on with his life as well? He still loves his wife. I don't necessarily doubt that he did not love his wife, but when does it become like, okay, if I keep going like this, I don't have some kind of semblance of peace of my own, I'm going to lose it. Caregivers need some kind of respite too. And like I say, even though I didn't like this unconventional method or what they were trying to do here with him bringing the white heifer in the house and having her live there, I felt like, listen, if you're going to do all that stuff, take that shit out the house. Have somebody else there to take care of B. You need to go and get your rocks off or whatever. You go and do that outside of her home. But don't bring this woman into her home and say that it's okay and it's good and they living together and they friends. And then B don't even know who this person is. B didn't even know who Dan was. So that's what I'm saying. At that point, when B doesn't even know you, it's like a death. And if you haven't had somebody with Alzheimer's, it's almost like you've lost that person. They're not even them anymore. So does anybody just have a semblance of understanding of how he may have needed to just move on because he was still living? Like I said, this is very unconventional. It's not something that I personally could have seen myself ever moving somebody in the house with us. But at some point, do you understand why he may have just needed to just keep going with his life? All right. This is just uncomfortable all the way around, right? I don't think anybody's going to be pleased with how this went because a lot of people love B.Smith. I remember how much my mother loved B.Smith, right? She just loved B.Smith, loved it. She had a cookbook. She just loved B.Smith. And so when I read about this, and I did this video a year ago, again, coming off of a father who had just died from the Alzheimer's. It didn't get as bad as B's. My father didn't get as bad as where, a lot of people didn't understand how you can die from Alzheimer's. But the truth of the matter is it takes a toll on your brain and your bodily function. And if your brain isn't functioning, your bodily functions start to eventually break down too. It can get to the point where you can't even, the person that is suffering, they can't even like swallow. It gets that bad. I don't know if B had gotten to that point, but I'm grateful to God that my father did not get to that point. All right. He was still able to do some of the stuff on his own. But just watching him go back to childhood and talk about people who weren't even here anymore, and just watching him. And then there were some days where he would look right through me as if he didn't even know who I was. That was very, very painful. So because I understand what it's like to have somebody with that condition, I just like to be a little cautious about saying, well, okay, let's not completely annihilate this man, even though, like I said, I don't like how he went about bringing this woman to the house. But at the same time, having a little bit of understanding about how he may feel like she wasn't even there anymore. And the wife that I knew wasn't her anymore. And what do you do in a position like that where the person that you loved, they're not even there? They are literally a shell of a person. All right. Very much an infant at this point. And what do? Do you just kind of this is it in sickness and in health? I understand that as a husband and a wife, I'm loving you through in sickness and in health. And I think he did that. Unconventional, yes. And like I said, it's just kind of like bringing this white woman up in here and talking about she taking care of B and all that stuff. I didn't like that. I just, for me personally, I'm just like side-eyeing, like, okay, you talking about she taking care of B too. How you know that she wasn't like trying to speed this whole shit up? I mean, I'm thinking about all the different things. Like maybe I watched too much ID channel, watched too much Lifetime movies and stuff like that. How we know that she wasn't trying to speed up the process of B dying? We don't know. Okay. Like I said, I just watched too much of that Lifetime shit not to at least think like that. Because remember, all of B's stuff, she didn't have any biological children. So all of her amassed wealth goes to Dan. I'm sure it goes to Dana as well, which is her stepdaughter. And Dan, of course, is going to run and marry Alex. So again, this black wealth that's been amassed now goes to a white woman. And a lot of people are not feeling that. All right. But like I said, I'm trying to come to you guys from both angles here and say, even though I'm not feeling that at all, do you understand, or do you unless you've been in a position where you had to take care of somebody with Alzheimer's, you don't necessarily know what you would do. I wouldn't do this. But see, I wasn't put in the position. I was taking care of my father, not my husband. You know what I'm saying? But at some point, do you kind of understand why when somebody is no longer there, and B hasn't been there in a long time, her body is there, her body was present, but her mind, the B that he knew had been long gone, that he needed some respite. Okay. And he found that in another woman, albeit bringing this heifer into the house, but he found it in somebody else. And do you understand it at all? Understand it even a little bit? Probably not. But I'm just saying, I'm just trying to come from both perspectives because, again, coming from a personal perspective of dealing with somebody that has that. Listen, I had to change my whole life when my father was here. And not that I wanted any sympathy about that or something like that, because I knew that putting him in a nursing home just wasn't financially feasible. These places wanted like $5,000-$6,000 a month. I didn't have that kind of money, so we was just gonna have to come together and try to figure it out, and we did. I had to buy special locks for the door. I just learned how to make it work. I had to bring like video cameras into the house, all kinds of stuff to make it work for our household. But I felt like a prisoner a lot of times where I couldn't go out and hang out with my friends. My friends wanted to go out, they went to party. I couldn't go. I did feel like sometimes I would be mad that my life was changing. But at the same time, I loved my father, and I had vowed to take care of him until the end of his life. And I did that until the day he died. But I also needed respite and felt like sometimes if I didn't get out of the house, sometimes I thought I was going to lose it, or have just a personal life. I thought I was going to lose it. So on one hand, I do understand what's going on here. And a lot of people won't. But I just wanted to share that with you guys about B.Smith, 70 years old and beautiful woman. B.Smith, not Black Martha Stewart, but B.Smith. And I just want to share that with you guys today. And do you understand any of this that's going on? Or do you think that if you're not in that position, you can't really judge what he did? Or do you like, hell no, don't move no white heifer into my house and I'm still here. I'm still alive. What do you guys think about this whole thing? Like I said, very unconventional, but certainly something to talk about. Let's discuss it. And I will see you guys on the next video. Like, comment, and subscribe. Take care, y'all.